Natural disasters have been happening since the beginning of time. For those who believe in the Big Bang Theory, you are the result of a natural disaster. No community, even the most prepared, the wealthiest, and the idyllic, is immune from being struck by natural disasters. Devastation, the loss of life, property, and hope, can be complete within a matter of minutes by hurricane, earthquake, fire, or flood. Most natural disasters take us by surprise, such as last year's wildfires in California or the earthquake in Haiti in 2010. Others are identified by modern technology in advance of their arrival, such as with Hurricanes Katrina, which almost completely destroyed New Orleans, and Irma and Maria, which ravaged the U.S. Virgin Islands. The city of New Orleans failed to get necessary information to its most vulnerable residents in time, and it failed to facilitate their evacuation. The empty buses and floodwater, buses that could have been filled with evacuees prior to the storm, are a testament to this failure. In those cases, and in many other cases of natural disasters in recent history, people had the time to evacuate and would have been able to if the means to do so and places for them to go had been better organized in advance. What is apparent is that the least scarce element of disaster relief is money. For example, Congress appropriated roughly $120 billion for Hurricane Katrina recovery efforts and $60 billion for Hurricane Sandy. There is no other entity, either separately or together, governmental or non-governmental, that can provide the amount of money and other resources that are necessary for disaster relief other than the U.S. government. So if it's not money, what is needed to successfully conduct natural disaster relief operations? The most salient factor that contributes to the scale of disasters is the lack of planning and execution of disaster relief management. Following the disaster in Puerto Rico in 2018, containers of relief supplies sat in the port undistributed and unused. This demonstrated the failure of people and organizations to absorb and distribute aid in a timely and effective manner. Too much money and material can not only swamp relief efforts, but also provide opportunities for misuse of funds and theft of relief supplies. What is needed from government is not necessarily more spending, but assisting local communities and governments with conducting effective planning and prevention measures. And when disasters do expose weaknesses, officials and non-governmental organizations must revise disaster management plans to address those gaps. Federal and state government will always be the primary source of funds and material for disaster relief, and there is certainly a role for community-based private fundraising efforts. Although funds raised locally are significantly less than those provided by the federal government, the use of these funds and donated goods will be much more effective. So what then can be done to make disaster relief more effective? Our task force team reviewed numerous cases of natural disasters and faced one major question. Why are some communities more resilient than others in the aftermath of natural disasters? And we believe the answer is prevention. Although you can't stop natural disasters from happening, an effective and preventative plan will help our community recover faster and with less suffering. Most cities have a disaster management plan, but unfortunately almost all of them are pro forma and do not provide effective action plans. We recommend that a plan should be developed with the help of a professionally accredited disaster management consulting firm. Professionals will assist us in preparing a strategy to address our specific vulnerabilities. An example of such a firm is WIT Global Partners, founded and led by James Lee Witt, a former director of the Federal Emergency Management Administration, also known as FEMA. There are several other firms that we have also reviewed. We as a city should request state and federal assistance in financing and the approval of a disaster preparation and mitigation plan prepared by one of these types of consulting firms. Local authorities should discontinue allowing the development of high-risk areas, such as flood zones, severe topography, and known geological fault lines. Local government subsidies of disaster insurance, including flood insurance, should be prohibited. The city government should conduct regular community awareness, education, and planning programs to prepare for the inevitability of extreme incidents. Updated disaster management plans should also be available to the public for review. With these recommendations and proper planning, we think that our community will be well prepared to deal with the consequences of any future natural disaster. The successful recovery from natural disasters is by no means universal, but it can be done. As the famous 19th century philosopher John Stuart Mill said, "What has so often excited wonder, the great rapidity with which countries recover from a state of devastation. The disappearance, in a short time, of all traces of the mischiefs done by earthquakes, floods, hurricanes, and the ravages of war."